Now at 4:30, we are breaking down day 11 in the Delphi murders trial.
And our team inside the courtroom tells us the headlining testimony today came from a psychologist who treated Richard Allen while he was behind bars.
Now that psychologist testified that he confessed to her, telling her, quote, "I killed Abby and Libby. I'm sorry." She says Allen also became tearful in his admission and said he had committed those murders alone.
Our 13 News legal expert, Jackson-Lindsay, joins us now to help break down these latest developments. So what do you make of these latest alleged confessions to this psychologist after the alleged confessions he made while in prison to others?
Well, it certainly is piling on in a way that's good for the state, right, in terms of meeting their burden. Like we've discussed before, it's always hard to convince a jury that your client didn't do something that your client is confessing to. But I think what we're going to find is that the jury's really going to have to balance this evidence against the denials that they heard initially.
And how is the jury going to do that? I mean, how much weight could this carry? I'm sitting there, I hear that, and I think, well, gee, he confessed, you know? And you know, do you think that that was really kind of one of those tipping the scale kind of testimonies?
I think anytime you hear a confession from a defendant under any circumstances tips the scales in favor of the state, at least to some extent, right? And so what the defense is going to continue to ask the jury to do is consider that he didn't confess before he was under the pressure of these conditions, when he was at home and normal and healthy, both mentally and physically. He denied it. And so it's definitely going to be a balancing act in how the jury's weighing the evidence.
And I expect we'll hear more about that when the defense presents its case, because again, this is just the state's part of the trial.
Absolutely, and we're already seeing a little bit of that towards the end of the day today in their cross-examination questions. They're also challenging the credibility of this witness, because what's significant is these are self-reported self-reported information. We're not listening to a recording of Richard Allen. We're not watching a video of these confessions. This is everything that someone is saying that he said, right? And so what we're seeing is that they're not only challenging her credibility in terms of his condition and the information she's giving, they're challenging her personal credibility and how attached she was to this case. So we're seeing a little bit of a preview of what I think their case will look like.
The defense just wrapped up their cross-examination of this witness. We're going to hear more on that coming up at 5 o'clock. But if you were the defense attorney conducting the cross, what would be your approach?
I would do exactly what they're doing. Again, I would challenge her credibility. We know there are issues with her credibility. She was terminated, or we don't know if it was a formal termination, but she was no longer at the DLC after this information came to light, along with the fact that she actually had sort of a significant interest in this case and whether or not that was proper. So I would certainly challenge her credibility, but also the credibility of the information she's giving. She's indicating that he didn't seem to be suffering from any mental illness, but he certainly seemed to be exhibiting what we as lay people would consider sort of psychotic or unhinged behavior. And so again, challenging her credibility personally, as well as the credibility of the information she's providing and how she's evaluating it, and then continuing to stack that against the fact that he did not confess before he was under these extreme conditions and these stressors.
Yes, and the pictures of him when he was arrested versus the pictures and the images of him when he was in those conditions, such a dramatic change.
Difference.
It's like you couldn't even tell it was the same person.
Exactly.
And I think that is also something that, you know, they're going to have to wade through.
Exactly. He's being housed somewhere with people who are convicted of crimes, the worst of the violent offenders in the state of Indiana, and he's being subjected to those conditions. And we have a better idea of what that looks like now. And I would imagine that would be extremely difficult for anyone. And he's also reviewing the evidence that he's received. So he knows more about the allegations at the point where he's spewing out this information.
All right, Jackson-Lindsay, thank you so much for that analysis. I know we'll hear from you again tonight on our Delphi debrief online at WTHR Plus at 10 o'clock.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
always good to see you, Katie, and have your insight and context.